History has been made in a historic playoff beatdown for the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to be breaking down how Sam Darnold and company punched their ticket to the NFC Championship Game for the first time since January 2015. Coming up here on our post-game edition, Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Going live here from Lumen Field. A special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in late on this Sunday night, Saturday night, technically Sunday morning here. Whether you're tuning in from Orangevale, California, or Pullman, Washington, we appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week and helping Locked On Podcast Network become the #1 podcast network for sports. The Seahawks are heading to the NFC Championship Game for the first time since January 2015. We're talking a little over a decade since the last time that the Seahawks were in the Final Four, and they will get to host at Lumen Field after a 41-6 throttling of the 49ers, and kind of like the 13-3 game a few weeks ago in Santa Clara. In an odd way, this game almost didn't feel as close as that score indicated. It was lopsided from the very beginning. The opening kickoff, Rashid Shaheed electrifies the sellout crowd at Lumen Field with a 95-yard kickoff return for a touchdown. Punter Eddie Pinheiro tried to trip him up near midfield and got penalized for it, but those efforts didn't work as Shaheed was able to stay upright, coasted down the sideline with his blazing track speed, and from there, the game was won. The 49ers got 6 points in the second quarter, and that was it. 8 straight quarters now against San Francisco that Seattle's defense has not given up a single touchdown. And this is an offense for the 49ers that absolutely was rolling in the last month and a half of the season, except for these 2 games against the dark side defense. They just could not figure out Mike McDonald's crew. And today was no different. Brock Purdy getting intercepted by Ernest Jones, lost a fumble. Jake Tongas lost a fumble in the opening quarter. Ernest Jones forced that one out as well. So they lost the turnover battle, and the Seahawks were able to run the football effectively again as well. Not quite the same number as last time, but very close. 175 rushing yards after having 180 in that win in Santa Clara in the season finale. So they win the rushing yards total. They get 3 turnovers, don't turn the ball over themselves, win the time of possession battle, only 2 penalties, and it's a 35-point blowout win. This ties the Super Bowl against Denver for the biggest margin of victory in a playoff game in Seahawks franchise history. So this was an utter shellacking. There's no other way to put it. And it really started with that tone-setting special teams play. And yet again, a player that John Schneider traded for at the deadline, sending a 4th and 5th round pick to the Saints. That looks like an absolute bargain now. 3 kick and punt returns for touchdowns in the last 6 games for Rashid Shaheed. He also had a 30-yard run and an end around in the second half of this game, part of Seattle's 175 rushing yards. So he continues to find different ways to make an impact, even if he's not catching the football much as a receiver. His special teams and rushing talents are making him more than worth the deal that the Seahawks made there. And Leonard Williams and Ernest Jones, 2 other guys that were trade deadline acquisitions in previous seasons. Williams had a sack on 4th and 2 that he blew up Brock Purdy second half. That led to some more points for the Seahawks. And Ernest Jones had the 2 turnovers that both netted touchdowns afterwards. So all those big moves that John Schneider has made, he continues to push the right buttons, and you're seeing it on defense, you're seeing it on special teams. Free agency-wise on offense, you're seeing players like Cooper Kupp deliver. He led the team with 60 receiving yards today. Jackson Smith and Jigba actually got held under 35 receiving yards, but he did catch the lone touchdown from Sam Darnold. And speaking of Darnold, he didn't do any of the pregame warm-ups leading up to when the team came out in full uniform. Only Drew Lock and Jalen Milroe were out there, but he wasn't ruled inactive with the oblique injury that popped up on the injury report on Thursday. And he was efficient, 12 for 17, 70% completion rate. Most importantly, no turnovers, and didn't look like he was having any major issues with nagging problems from that injury. He's going to have to manage it the rest of the playoffs, but he really didn't look like anything was bothering him, and he got more confident as the game went on. And it's easy to be confident when you're handing the football off and you are getting 5 yards a carry, and your running backs, your receivers are getting involved. The offensive line is cleaning up front. So this was as dominant of an effort as you are going to see in all three phases. You get the kick return, you get the 3 turnovers on defense, and that's not including several fourth down stops as well. San Francisco just could not get anything going. Even early in the game when they got a couple screens that hit, Christian McCaffrey had a couple decent runs. Brock Purdy was able to get outside the pocket on a couple scrambles. It didn't matter. Those individual plays ultimately didn't do much. They were able to get a couple field goals, and that is it. So credit to the defense once again for delivering. They were able to generate a lot more pressure in the second half on Brock Purdy once the game started getting out of hand scoreboard-wise. And, you go up 17-0 early and 24-6 at the half. Like, that had to feel insurmountable with the way that the Seahawks defense is playing and just how bottled up Kyle Shanahan's offense was. They could not find answers. Seattle was making big plays on special teams to limit the starting field position for the 49ers as well. You had all those fourth down stops that were sprinkled in. And then offensively, just very efficient. Again, 3 rushing touchdowns from Ken Walker III. He has 115 rushing yards. They were able to really get K9 unlocked. The front line was getting the job done, whether it was on the perimeter, between the tackles. They ran the football effectively. For the most part, protected Sam Darnold really well. Got sacked a couple times, but he bounced right back after those plays. So this was as perfect of an outing as you are going to see. It's pretty hard to nitpick anything to complain about except for, maybe the first offensive possession, getting only a field goal instead of a touchdown. There's always areas you can improve upon, and the Seahawks will certainly be doing that going into their preparation for the NFC Championship game. But this was as complete of an utter domination as you are going to see by a football team at any level. The 49ers were out of their league, and I joked about this during the game. It felt like I was watching the movie Dodgeball, and the Seahawks were Globo Gym out there. We're better than you, and we know it. They were doing that every step of the way. The 49ers had a little momentum, got it down to 17-6. Seattle goes down in the end of the half. 30 seconds to go, Ken Walker punches in first of his 3 touchdowns. Just every time the 49ers tried to muster some semblance of a fight, the Seahawks played schoolyard bully and just kicked them back into the dirt. And that was what was going on this entire football game. For Seahawks fans, it was a sight to behold. The stadium was as loud as I have heard it in my entire time covering this team, dating back to the 2017 season. I don't know that I've ever heard it that loud, particularly that kick return to open the game. You could feel the press box shaking. Lumen Field has got its mystique back. They have gotten it over the course of the season. Started off slow there, obviously the 3-6 record last season, but that mystique that seemed like it had worn off, it's back. That shine has returned, and the 12s brought it. The players put on an incredible show for them, and with that, Seahawks get that date in the NFC Championship game back at Lumen Field. The 12s get to do it again next weekend. The only question is it going to be the Rams coming back for round 3, another NFC West matchup, or will it be Caleb Williams and the Bears looking to get to the Super Bowl with a first-year head coach in Ben Johnson? We'll find out tomorrow who's going to be playing the Seahawks. But for now, fans can enjoy, until then, this just salad, this is just scintillating, salivating, any term you want to use, this 41-6 beatdown. Cherish it. Enjoy it. This is not something you get to experience very often. And then this Seahawks team right now, something special is brewing. They've still got a long way to go to get their ultimate goal, winning a Super Bowl, but they are one step closer, need to win 2 more games to be atop the NFL. And there aren't many teams that can say that they are in that position. Certainly the way the Seahawks did it, that is an emphatic statement to the entire rest of the NFL, the last few teams that are standing and to get out of it without too many injury concerns. Certainly something that Seahawks fans are going to be looking at, thinking we are in really good shape going into the NFC Championship game coming up next week. Coming up next here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks, Going to be dishing out my weekly game balls, offense, defense, special teams. Who were the biggest stars in this 35-point thrashing of the 49ers? I'll get to that up next year on our post-game edition, Locked On Seahawks. We are in the midst of the divisional round in the NFL. There's nothing like being at the game. The crowd noise, the energy, cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting the actual tickets, whether it's dealing with logins, watching prices change right at checkout. That's why Game Time has the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. I pull up on the Game Time app to check out upcoming NFL games. I can find great ticket options almost instantly. The app is incredibly intuitive. Browsing, comparing, buying tickets takes just a few minutes. And with the zone deals, you pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save even more money. I really like the fees are included up front, so the price you see is exactly what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today and get back to being there live. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. You live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free by joining the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord, access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to LockedOnSeahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. The Seahawks are advancing to the NFC Championship Game for the first time since 2015. It's been more than a decade since Seattle was in the Final Four, but they punched their ticket. They will be back at home next weekend against the Bears or the Rams after a 41-6 blowout win over the 49ers. It was never in doubt. Seattle getting the kick return from Rashid Shaheed to open the game, go up 7-0. The defense gets a turnover on downs. That's followed by Jason Myers' field goal, then a forced fumble by Ernest Jones. Sam Darnold goes down and throws a touchdown to Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's 17-0 before the first quarter has even concluded. At that point, the 49ers were already down and out, and the Seahawks just kept building on that lead in the second half and turning this into a tie for the biggest margin of victory for the team in franchise history in the postseason. The only other one that equals it, their Super Bowl victory, the 43-8 game over the Denver Broncos back in February 2014. So certainly an exciting day for Seahawk fans. Let's dive deeper with our game balls, as I do each and every week. The biggest stars, and there were plenty of them today for the Seattle Seahawks. Let's start on offense. The best game of Ken Walker III's career, no doubt. 3 rushing touchdowns. First one came at the 37-second mark in the first half. That put the Seahawks up 24-6 right before halftime. He added a 15-6-yard touchdown on the ground in the second half. You got to see his improving vision. You got to see his shiftiness, his explosiveness. It was all on display. And leading the Seahawks on the ground, running the football for 116 yards, 6.1 yards per carry to go with the touchdowns. I just thought, I don't know that we've ever seen Ken Walker be the tone setter. It's normally the guys up front, and he certainly can be the electric player with his ability to hit a home run anytime he touches the football. But the energy and the aggressiveness that he played with tonight, I really felt like K9 was the aggressor for the Seahawks, particularly when they were just packing onto that lead in the second half. They didn't really take their foot off the pedal. It was on the entire game. Let's put our foot down in the throat and let's make it that this is an absolute annihilation. And he was a big part of that. You could see him talking trash on the field after he was running the football at players like Lenore and giving them a little bit of feedback back. You could tell he was really having fun. He was relishing that opportunity. This is just as complete of a game as we've seen from him. And I just loved the different attitude and the way that he was going all the way when it came to finishing plays, the cutbacks he was making, slipping through tackles. I mean, he just played as well as I've seen him play in an NFL uniform. And that was a big reason the Seahawks were able to run away with this one going early. They got some big runs from him early in the game. Second half, he was the finisher with those 2 touchdown runs that really, the game was already in doubt, but just really adding insult to injury for the 49ers. I thought Ken Walker III really did that. So an impressive performance for K9 out of the backfield, leading a supercharged rushing attack it's been as good as any rushing attack in the NFL for the last 4 games. On the defensive side of the football, there were actually a few players I considered for this one, but got to go with the guy that led the team in turnovers forced, and that is Ernest Jones, especially coming off a week where he missed a practice where he was sick and he was limited another day. He was not feeling well the middle of the week. He was able to turn the corner, though, just in time for this game, was ready to go, and showed no ill effects from that illness, played one of the better games of his career. Jake Tongas, the second drive for the 49ers, San Francisco was past midfield on a completion. Tongas, and if he would have held on to the football, San Francisco's in business, and maybe they march down and get some points, and this game is kept relatively close, at least at that stage. But the snowball, the avalanche, really got started at that point with Jones knocking the football out of his hands for a fumble. Julian Love recovers it. Seattle goes down and gets a touchdown. Sam Darnold to Jackson Smith and Jigba, 17-0 suddenly. That was one of the big catalyst plays early in this game that just put the 49ers behind the 8 ball and gave them absolutely no chance to win this one. Then early in the third quarter, Jones gets his 6th interception of the season, first in the playoffs, picking off Brock Purdy. He was trying to go to another tight end in Luke Farrell, and the throw was a little bit behind the receiver. He was pressured by multiple pass rushers, and it went right into Ernest Jones' lap. As he joked about after the game, it almost felt like the ball found him rather than he found the ball in coverage. But he'll take the interception nonetheless. Seattle goes down, and Ken Walker gets his 2nd rushing touchdown, and they've got 34 points actually on the scoreboard at that point. It was a fantastic effort from number 13. Maybe not as many tackles as we're used to seeing from him, but he was making those plays in coverage, creating the turnovers that led to 14 points. It was an exciting development for the Seahawks to see Ernest Jones continue to do that. And again, it just looks so bad for the teams that let him go. The Rams and the Titans, what were you guys doing? This is an all-pro linebacker that is now making massive plays in the postseason for the number 1 defense in the NFL. That trade continues to look like an absolute steal for John Schneider, and the new contract they gave him is looking like a steal at this point of the season as well. Ernest Jones continues to play outstanding football. And on special teams, this is a no-brainer. We got to go with Mr. Electric himself, being Rashid Shaheed, that opening kickoff. And it was such an odd situation because with the Broncos-Bills game going to overtime, they delayed the start for this NFC divisional round game so that fans didn't miss any of the action in the Emerald City. That added some time in the locker room that these players had to make up for. And, so hyped up for the game. And sometimes when you have a delay like that, it can take players out of their rhythm. But Rashid Shaheed quickly gave the Seahawks all of their energy back with that scintillating kick return that he showed his former running back background. They were reading the blocks, finding the crease, slipping through a tackle, and then turned on his track speed, able to get past Piñeiro's trip attempt that was flagged anyway, even though it wasn't successful. And Shaheed ends up ripping off a 95-yard kick return, and you see all the green pom-poms in the crowd being waved. It was just the energy was just on another level. It was beyond palpable in the stadium, and he really electrified everybody. And the Seahawks fed off that. The defense goes out and gets a 4th down stop the next drive. And again, you had this snowball that very quickly turned into an avalanche. And at that point, the 49ers, there was nothing they could do with the injuries they were dealing with how well the Seahawks are playing. There was literally nothing they could do at that point. The game was already there was no doubt. And Seattle was just going to keep pressing the issue as the game went into the second half. And so Shaheed really set that tone. He had that really nice 30-yard run in the second half as well that set up a scoring drive for Seattle. So you look at what he did, just how electric he's been in kick and punt returns. He has looked like Dante Hall or Devin Hester out there in the last 6 games of those 3 kick and punt returns. And they've come at such crucial moments. That one against the Rams really kickstarted that comeback. And then this one right out of the gate. That play, that is demoralizing, especially for an underdog coming in on the road that's got a bunch of good players that are out injured. And Shaheed really played the role of early finisher there, putting his foot in the jugular with that return. And the 49ers just never recovered from that. And the Seahawks just kept piling on points. So Shaheed, he was the real difference maker here that got all this started. Clearly the special teams player of the game with that 95-yard kick return. Up next, going to shift gears here to our 3 up, 3 down. Give you a little bit of hint. There's nobody down here after a 41-6 win over the 49ers. A lot of positivity, plenty of other big names that starred tonight that didn't get game balls, but certainly deserve some recognition. We'll be breaking that down coming up next year on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by FanDuel. The divisional round is underway. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app, and each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks and then apply your profit boost to go even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Welcome back to the post-game edition, Locked On Seahawks, live here from Lumen Field. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, and thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. The Seahawks have punched their ticket to the NFC Championship Game, first time since January 2015, with an emphatic 41-6 win over the 49ers. Just an absolute thrashing, dominated in all 3 phases from the opening kickoff until the end when the backups were in. Just an utter shellacking by Mike McDonald's crew. Let's get to the 3 up stock watch. Look, I don't know that you could nitpick anybody that had a bad game for the Seahawks. They were that good. Everybody was clicking on all cylinders. So let's talk about the other players that maybe weren't quite good enough to get a game ball, but still deserve some kudos coming out of this game. And I want to start on the offensive side of the football with the man under center himself, Sam Darnold. Going into this game, the oblique injury concerns with how late that cropped up in the week, being added to the injury report on Thursday, listed as questionable, not doing the pregame throwing. He was throwing in the locker room a little bit instead. That's what the player told us after the game. So there were a lot of questions. How much is this injury going to impact his ability to throw the football? And Seattle didn't have to have him throw very much, but I thought that Darnold did a fantastic job early. There were a couple throws that really showed that the injury was not bugging him that much, and it really wasn't impacting his performance. But the one that really stood out to me on Seattle's second drive, first play, Darnold tries to roll out to his right. He gets sacked for a 10-yard loss, and he looked like he was limping a little bit. I was wondering after that play, did that, injure his leg a little bit, or is that resulting from the oblique injury? There were some questions there. Literally comes back on the next play, 2nd and 20, throws a perfect dime into the bucket on a corner out to Cooper Kupp for 21 yards and moves the chains. Suddenly a advantageous situation for the 49ers is 1st and 10 for the Seahawks with that great throw. He had several other times where he took the dump downs, let his receivers, his running backs, Ken Walker III, create after the catch some. They didn't ask him to do too much, but when he needed to make big throws, the touchdown to Jack Smith and Jigba, JSN did not look open on that play, but he decided to let it rip, and he threw his receiver open in the back left-hand corner of the end zone. that was as good of a throw as you were going to see in the red zone. 70% completion rate. I know he didn't have to throw the football a lot. A lot of that was the way that the game was dictated with special teams points and getting turnovers, running the football well. They didn't have to have him drop back and throw a bunch of times, but when he did, he was effective. I thought he demonstrated great toughness and resiliency. That's good news for the Seahawks heading towards the next round, that they can be comfortable that Sam Darnold is going to be able to continue playing at a high level. They just got to hope they can keep that run game going to complement him to go with the defense and special teams that they have. Sticking on offense, Cooper Kupp, I don't know that he had a game this year that he led the team in receiving yards. They have to go back and look at the box scores, but if he did, it's only happened one or two times. It has been the Jackson Smith and Jigba show, but today, 5 catches, 60 yards, led the team in receiving yards. And that 21-yard catch on 2nd and 20 that I mentioned, seemed like he came up with big catches throughout the early portion of this game in high leverage situations and really delivered. Sam Darnold was looking for him, had a couple beautiful run blocks, including on a 15-yard run by Zach Charbonnet in the first quarter that sealed the defender out towards the sidelines. He continues to be as good as any receiver in the National Football League at doing that. I just thought he quietly had a really good football game, and he gave Sam Darnold an outlet. A day where Darnold didn't throw the football a lot. He had 12 completions. Almost half of them went to Cooper Kupp, and he delivers in the postseason, something he's done plenty of times in the past for the Los Angeles Rams. And his reward, he gets to play in an NFC title game for the first time since the Rams won it all back in 2021. At that point, he was one of the focal points for that Rams offense. The focal point that had a triple crown that season, was also the Super Bowl MVP. The Seahawks are hoping they can get just a sliver of that here, but a really fun performance from Cooper Kupp today in front of the hometown fans, and led the team in receiving, made the big blocks in the run game. I thought he quietly had a very good game. And let's give Amari Kite some kudos. Charles Cross coming out in the second half with a new foot injury. Doesn't necessarily sound like this is something the Seahawks are that worried about, but they just decided with where the game was at, not going to force the issue, put him back in the lineup. But all Amari Kite, the undrafted rookie out of UCF, does, he comes into the game and he has a key block to spring Ken Walker for his 15-yard touchdown, the second of 3 rushing touchdowns he had in this game. Kite had a great block that created the crease there for Ken Walker III. So, again, kudos to the rookie, getting his opportunity and not just being out there, but standing out, making some really nice blocks. There was a few plays that looked like he might not have necessarily gotten his assignment, but this kid is showing why the Seahawks gave him a roster spot, why they kept him around as an undrafted player. He's worked really hard for this opportunity. John Benton's got him coached up so that he's ready for this chance. If he has to go into the lineup, Josh Jones was not available today. He goes in and gets the job done in the second half. So I thought that was an incredibly impressive display there for Amari Kite, coming in the heat of a divisional round game and making some crucial blocks, including one that created a touchdown opportunity for Ken Walker III. Meanwhile, on defense, I got to start with two of the main stalwarts for the Seahawks up front. DeMarcus Lawrence, what can you say about this guy at this point? It feels like he is forcing a fumble every single week for the Seahawks, and that included today in the fourth quarter when the game was already decided. The Seahawks were up, I believe at that point they were up by 35 points. But fourth down, chases down Brock Purdy from behind, knocks the football out for a strip sack. Nick Emanwari recovers it, and it's the third turnover of the day. Lawrence was all over the place. He had a couple other really nice pressures where he was chasing after Brock Purdy. Just continues to deliver impact play after impact play, and the leadership that he's provided for a lot of the young guys on this defense, the mentorship, the leading by example. He just continues to do it. And then you got Leonard Williams. Maybe one of the best stories coming out of the game today in the press conference was him paying it forward with Gray Zabel, who he was giving advice during training camp. He was working with the rookie, giving him some advice during one-on-ones. Now Leonard Williams is leaning on Gray Zabel, who pointed out some tendencies that teams were trying to slide their center in protection consistently to block him, and said, why don't you just shoot the B gap if they're going to do that? Started doing that in the second half and gets a 4th and 2 sack where showed absolutely no respect for there potentially being a run play in 4th and 2, and hits Brock Purdy before he's even done executing his play fake for a 14-yard tackle for a loss, a sack, that ends the drive. That was a fantastic play that really got the crowd rolling even more. That was one of the biggest plays tonight in terms of the roar in the stands. And he also had a second sack that was taken away. I still think Brock Purdy was out of bounds on another fourth down that he threw. They said he threw it in bounds. It looked like he was out, and Leonard Williams would have had another sack on that one, but had that one taken away. But we had to see both DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams really getting after it as they've done all season, giving that veteran presence to this otherwise really young defense and making a ton of plays out there, setting the tone in the trenches, both against the run and rushing the passer. And let's give Mike Morris a shout out. He wasn't going to get special teams player of the week. He wasn't going to get game ball because of what Rashid Shaheed did with that opening kickoff return. But Mike McDonald shouted him out unprompted after the game, as he should have. He had a couple special teams tackles that were really impressive. And this is a 300-pound man. And I know the new kickoff, you can have players like that because they're not running all the way downfield like the original kickoff rules. And they're only a few yards apart from the blockers. So you can have those bigger bodies, but still there is a skill. There is a specific trade to that, being able to work off blocks and making tackles in space. That's still really difficult to do for a big man. And yet Mike Morris has excelled at it all season. And he's only getting better. He had two excellent open field tackles that pushed the 49ers inside their own 30-yard line, which with today's rules, that's ideal starting field position for a defense. And Mike Morris made that happen. So kudos to number 94. He is continuing to make plays on special teams. When he gets his chances on defense, he shows up and makes positive contributions. He's really had a nice third season for the Seahawks, and he's found his niche as that reserve that can be a core special teams player within the confines of the rules that are now built to be more equipped for these bigger guys to play in the third phase of the game. So he was one of my other real big winners if you look at defense special team standpoint, coming up with those tackles on kick coverage that were so big and set up the 49ers to have to make these long drives that, quite frankly, they just could not do against this suffocating Seahawks defense. As always, you can follow me at X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up on Monday, I'll be back with Rob Rang. We'll have our Monday musings coming out of this big victory over the 49ers, plenty of film observations, and we'll start to take a look at the Seahawks' upcoming opponent, whether it's the Rams or the Bears, who win tomorrow at Soldier Field, gearing up for that NFC Championship game. Make sure that you listen in and enjoy a stress-free Sunday. Go Hawks.